Hey everybody, it's Chris with Xano, and today I'm going to talk to you about filters. We're going to be talking a lot about filters in the coming weeks because we're going to be giving you videos on how to use all of the various filters that are available in Xano. There are a lot of them, and it's really easy to just forget that something exists when it may be perfect for your use case. So hopefully these videos you will find helpful in being able to recall these filters and continue building in Xano more quickly and more efficiently. In this video, we're going to be talking about text filters. So any filter that we have that relates to transforming text, we're going to go over in this video. Let's dive in. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a variable so we can look at this list of filters. So let's go to add filter and let's go to text. And you can see there are a ton of filters here for us to go through. So I'm going to go through these one by one and show you what they do. So let's start at the top. We have a filter called add slashes, which will add a backslash to single quotes, double quotes, backslashes, and null characters. So what does this mean? Sometimes when you're returning a response through your API, you have special characters that aren't translated quite right. So you know that in the JSON that represents a response, your keys and your values are in quotes already. So if I have a text string that has a quote in there, that actually breaks that flow, and then your keys and values get all messed up and it's a mess. To get around this, we add backslashes to those characters so a front end can process a text string with a quotation mark as an example in that without destroying the rest of the response at the same time. So let me show you. So let's add a text string to this variable. So let's say, I'm going to say, this is my test string. We're going to apply the add slashes filter. And let's run this. And you can see now we have backslashes. So these characters are properly escaped, which means that a front end should be able to process this without an issue. Now, the next filter that we're going to be talking about is the capitalize filter. The capitalize filter converts the first letter of each word to a capital letter. So let's go ahead and apply that filter to our test string. And you can see the first letter of each of these words is now capitalized. Next, we have the concat filter, which concatenates two values together. So we're essentially taking two strings and smashing them together into one value. So we have our test string. It says this is my test string. And if we add a concat filter, our value that we're going to add is awesome. And then we define a separator. So what are we using, if anything, to separate these in our string? I'm just going to put a comma in here. And we'll click update and then save. And now if we run this, you can see we have this is my test string and then our comma and then the word awesome. So this can be really helpful if you need to take multiple strings and push them together into a single value. Our next filter is called contains, and contains returns a true or false based on whether the expression that we use to search exists in the value that we're searching. So if I put the word hello in here, and we go ahead and run this, we get a false because our test string does not contain that value. But if we change this to the word test, and we try again, we should see a true. So this could help you parse through a text string and see if a certain value exists and maybe use a conditional with this true or false value that you receive. So next we have a very similar filter called ends with, which returns whether or not the expression is present at the end. So if we apply this filter and we will make our search text hello and we run this, we get a false. However, if we put the word string with a period at the end and click update, we'll save that and let's run. We get a true. When is this useful? Maybe your users are providing a URL and you need to make sure that the end of the URL has a certain string or a certain domain name or something like that, just depending on your specific use case. It's just an example. Ends with could be a filter that you would want to use here. Now, the escape filter almost the same as the add slashes filter. However, the escape filter does the same thing, but also includes tabs and new lines. So if I apply the escape filter to my test string, and I'm going to go ahead and put in a couple of line breaks here, and we'll save this. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. You can see our line breaks have been escaped to \n. Again, very useful if you have a front end that requires these escaped characters. The next filters that we have are icontains and iEndsWith. These are almost the exact same as contains and ends with. However, these are case insensitive. Contains and endwith are case sensitive. Icontains and iEndWith are not. The next filter that we have is iindex and index. Again, the only difference between these is the case sensitivity. Let's go ahead and show the index filter. What the index filter does is it returns the index, which is just the position of the expression that we provide. So if I type in string with a period and we update this, that means that 16 characters into our test string, that is where the value of string appears. The same applies to I starts with. That is the same thing as the starts with filter, which is very similar to the ends with filter, except I starts with is case insensitive. The next filter that I'll show you is ltrim. Ltrim trims white space or other characters from the left side and returns the result. I'm going to apply this filter and I'm going to leave the mask blank for now. And I'm going to update my string and I'm just going to put a whole bunch of spaces at the beginning. And we'll save this. And when we run, you can see all those spaces are gone and we just have our string. Rtrim does the same thing, except it does it on the right side. And then we also have trim, which does it on both sides. The mask option just allows you to specify a specific list of characters to trim from either the left or the right or both sides, depending on which filter you choose. So the next filter that we're going to talk about is query string parse. And I actually need to show you a couple of filters to make this one make sense. So what query string parse does is it will actually take these query parameters from a URL and separate them into key value pairs. Now, the reason that we need to use this in conjunction with another filter is because if I run and debug this now, you can see we actually get the whole URL in the first value, which we don't want. So let's actually fix that, and we can show you another filter at the same time. So this filter is going to be URL parse. And what URL parse does is it parses a URL into its individual components. So let's actually take a look at that first. So you can see in this URL parse, we have the schema, the host, the path, and then finally the query. Now, if we want to take this query and we want to separate it out into key and value pairs, we actually would need to create a new variable. And this variable's value is going to be var1.query. So we get only that query piece of that object. And now we will go ahead and use our query string parse filter. And let's change our response to show that new variable. And now if we run this, there are our separate key and value pairs for the query parameters from that URL. The next filter that we're going to take a look at is regex get all matches. We're starting to get a little bit complicated here, but I promise you'll be able to pick it up. So before we get into this filter and the other regex filters that we have, let me just sort of explain to you a little bit about what regex is. Regex is actually short for regular expression. Essentially, it's a bunch of characters that specify a search query on a block of text. So the first filter that we have is regex get all matches. So let's go ahead and choose this filter. And now we're prompted for a subject. So for this filter, our subject is actually going to be the string that we're searching through. So let's say I want my string to be hello, how are you? And we'll go ahead and update that. So in the main value box, this is where we actually need to define our search string. So for this example, we're going to keep it really simple. We're going to put a / and the word R, and then another forward slash. And we'll go ahead and save this. And now if we run, you can see we get our match, our single match, which is just the word R. Now if we do this again and we update our text string, and let's just put the R a couple more times, and we'll go ahead and update and save and then run this again. You can see now we get all of those because all of those words match our search string. Very similar to get all matches is get first match. This does the same thing. It just returns the first match. Regex matches will test if the expression matches the supplied text. So a good example for something like this would be a phone number. Let's go ahead and add my filter first. My subject text is going to be 123-456-7890. Perfectly normal phone number there. Okay, so for my value, I'm going to paste something super long and complicated in here. It's going to look a little ridiculous. What I'm going to do is after this, I'm going to show you a couple of examples of places you can go to help you build these regular expressions if you're not familiar with the language. But for this example, you can at least see how the filter works. So this expression here is going to validate whether or not this phone number is valid. So let's go ahead and save that, and we'll run. And you can see we get a true, which means that that is a valid phone number according to this regular expression that we've provided. Now we have two more regex filters to look at. So we have regex quote, which updates the supplied text to be properly escaped for regular expressions. So do you remember a little bit ago when we were using the escape filter and the add slashes filter? This does something very similar. It just updates those special characters to make sure they can be properly escaped for regular expressions specifically, because those rules are a little bit different. And then finally, we have regex replace. This will take text that you provide and actually perform a regular expression on it. So let me show you what that means. Let's go ahead and apply the regex replace filter. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type an email. So I'm going to say support@xano.com. And my subject is going to be please email sales@xano.com. And now finally, for my regular expression, let's go ahead and get rid of the old ones. This is my regular expression, and so what this is going to do is this is going to search for an email address and replace it with my replacement text. So let's save this, and if we run, you can see that email has been replaced with support@xano.com. Before it was sales@xano.com. So if you're trying to build a regular expression, I'm going to recommend this website called Regex 101. This is a great place to go that will kind of walk you through building regular expressions, and you can also test them right in here. It's a really great resource. Okay, so the next filter that we have, this one's nice and simple. It's called replace. And what does replace do? It searches for a string and replaces it with another. So let's go ahead and let's put a value in here, and let's say, hello, my name is Chris. And let's put a replace filter on that. And I'm going to search for Chris, and I'm going to replace that with Sean. So let's go ahead and save this. And let's run. And you can see it says, hello, my name is Sean. So the word Chris has been replaced with the word Sean. The next filter we're going to talk about is the split filter. This one is super useful. What split does is it takes a string of text and turns it into an array. This can be really helpful if, for example, you have an external API that you're calling that just returns a comma-separated list as a text string, but not as an array. And let's say you need to work through each of those values individually. So let's actually see what that looks like here. Let's go ahead and just put a bunch of numbers separated by commas as our text. And let's apply the split filter. Our separator, so Xano knows where to look when actually separating these values. That's going to be a comma. And if we save this and run it, you will see that we are now returned an array. Very cool, very useful. Next, we have sprintf, which is very similar to replace. What sprintf does is it allows you to perform sequential replacement of values in a text string. So let me show you an example. I'm just going to put here is my text and %s and %s. Looks a little weird, but what sprintf is going to do, it's going to look for %s and it's going to replace those in order with our arguments. So if I type in hello as the first argument and goodbye as the second argument, you can see our new value is here's my text and hello and goodbye. So kind of like the replace filter, but it allows you to perform multiple replacements on the same string without having to chain multiple filters. You can do it all in one. Pretty cool. This can be really useful if you have an external API that you're calling, again, and you need to replace multiple values in that URL. Sprintf is a great option for that. Our next filter is strip HTML. What this does is this removes HTML tags from a string. So as an example, let's say I have a link. Maybe I'm scraping a web page and I just need the text that is contained inside of that link. So let's go ahead and let's type out some HTML here. So if we did this right, we should just be returned the word hello. And you can see we get the word hello back and nothing else. So super useful, especially if you're parsing through a lot of HTML and you just need some text out of that. It's really handy. The next filter that we have is string length, shortened to strlen. This just returns the number of characters in our string. So let's go ahead and run, and you can see we get the number of characters. Very simple. Next, we have substring or substr, which extracts a specific section of text. Let's say I want to start at character 15 and I want 5 characters. So we'll go ahead and update this and save. And now if we run, you can see we get our partial string very simply. The next filters that we have are 2 lower and 2 upper, which just converts everything to lowercase or everything to uppercase. Now, the last few filters that I'm going to go over today all have to do with working with URLs. So this allows us to parse a URL and return a new URL with an added argument. So let's take a look at this one first. So let's go ahead and type in a URL here. And let's go ahead and use the URL add arg to add a new argument to it. So my key is going to be test, and my value is going to be 123. And then you also have the option to apply RFC 3986 specification to this, which is essentially just a format for providing certain escaped characters just to make sure that it's URL friendly. So let's go ahead and update this and run. And you can see there's our URL with the argument attached. Now we also have URL delete argument, so I'm going to go ahead and add that filter and provide the key of test. So now because we're adding this in the previous step using URL add arg, this means that we'll just get the URL back with nothing else. Let's take a look. And there it is, just our base URL. Now the next filter that we have is URL get arg, which will allow me to get the value of a URL argument. And I can also apply a default value. So maybe you have an API that's returning a bunch of URLs, and sometimes they have this argument and sometimes they don't. Obviously, you don't want your function stack to stop while it's looping through those. So you can just apply a default value here if you want. So let's go ahead and remove our delete argument filter. So now when we run this, we should just get the value of the test key. And there it is. There's our value of test, which is 123. And finally, we have URL has arg. Very similar to get arg, but this instead just returns a true or false based on whether or not the key that we're asking for exists. So let's remove our URL get arg and we'll save this. And now we run. You can see we get true because that key of test exists in our URL. I know that was a lot. Thank you for sticking through it with me. I really hope you find this video helpful, not only immediately, maybe there was something you were trying to do, but you couldn't quite figure it out, and now you've seen a filter that's going to help you get unblocked. That's awesome. Definitely keep this video bookmarked and maybe refer back to it if you have a similar need for some text transformation in the future and you're not quite sure how to handle it. This can continue to be a great resource for you. We also have all of these filters detailed in our documentation, so you can refer to that as well. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, or you can reach out to us via support chat inside Xano or on the Xano community. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.